Some people would believe that Stephen Paddock does not fit the profile for these beta male mass shooters I've been talking about in numerous videos because he is 64 years old. However, as I dig deeper into Stephen Paddock's background, I see that he clearly fits the pattern and the profile for what I call the beta male mass shooter. Now, this beta male mass shooter is something that has come out of this soft male. And your soft male is a product of gynocentrism. And gynocentrism started once females got the right to vote. Once the woman got the right to vote, she began to get power in American society. So your Stephen Paddock fits right within the profile as related to many of these beta males. And if you look at his family structure, it clearly shows us that your Stephen Paddock grew up to become what is a beta male. Because Stephen Paddock's father was a bank robber who was wanted by the law. So that shows me that possibly this man grew up in a single mother household, one of the core elements that creates a beta male. Beta males primarily come from households where there are either a single mother household or a household where there are two parents and one of the parents, who is the father, is a beta male himself because he passes this behavior on to his son and his son learns it as well. And as I look at what the people are talking about regarding this Stephen Paddock, I clearly see beta male behavior. When I look at his picture, I see beta male body language in the way he stands and the way he looks in many of the pictures. He really clearly shows beta male body language in the way he stands because his body language looks really weak. It does not look really strong. And when people talk about the things that he does and the way he acts, how he had no religious beliefs, no political beliefs, no sort of beliefs at all regarding any sort of things of substance, that shows me something that Dr. Robert Glover talked about in his No More Mr. Nice Guy book called the Teflon Man. And when it comes down to the Teflon Man, he doesn't want anything to stick to him. And I look at your Stephen Paddock's background and I clearly see the Teflon Man emerging in this guy, because when it comes down to this guy and his father, he doesn't want to be like his father because his father was a notorious bank robber. He was wanted for several years, and he wants to be nothing like his father. So I look at his behavior, and I clearly see signs of overcompensation in his behavior, where he's created this Teflon facade so that nothing can stick to him, so he can appear to be the perfect image of this quote-unquote good man. And what most people don't understand about your nice guys who try to put on this good image is that when it comes down to these guys, they look good on the outside, but on the inside, they are oftentimes simmering and boiling in rage. And eventually, that rage boils so deep inside of them that it eventually explodes. And when it explodes, this is when these guys go out here and participate in horrific acts of violence. Now, when it comes down to this Stephen Paddock, not only do I see things in his past background that show me that he's a nice guy beta male, but I also see things in his current life that show me that he's clearly a nice guy beta male in the fact that he had this secret life. And when it comes down to many of these beta males out here, they oftentimes have secret lives. And when it comes down to their secret lives, they try to keep them far, far away from other people. Now, an example of this would be with your Steven Stevens, who was out here, and he had a secret life where he was out here gambling, and his girlfriend, Joy Lane, didn't know anything about it, and he had gambled away almost all of his money. And other nice guy traits is that they'll go out here and they'll watch a lot of pornography in secret, or they'll go out here and frequent prostitutes in secret. And this is a part of their secret life because this is a part of themselves that they feel that they cannot express themselves publicly because they feel like their reputation would be tarnished. And when I look at your Stephen Paddock, here's a guy who was an accountant and a professional, and most people didn't think much of it, that he was out here, he had a few guns, but he was having the secret life where he was having these machine guns and these bombs and these weapons, and it clearly shows me that this guy was living a secret life where he was collecting these things and didn't really tell anyone about them because that was something he kept to himself because he was afraid if that came out people would see him as some sort of fanatic. And this is another behavior that your beta male nice guys have, is that they feel like they have to have this secret life because they're suppressing who they truly are. When another trait with these guys is that they very much suppress who they truly are. They'll come out and have this nice facade, but they won't let the real person come out. And when the real person comes out, it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They're Dr. Jekyll being nice and friendly on the outside, but then they're Mr. Hyde to those in private who eventually have to deal with their explosions of rage. Because these guys not only explode with these acts of violence, but they also explode at family members after over time. Because a lot of times these guys, they're simmering and they're boiling, and all it takes is for one little thing to happen, and they'll blow up at a wife or a girlfriend. And that's one of the things that they do. And as I look at this guy's pattern and profile, it fits right within the profiles I've been talking about in many of these videos regarding these beta male mass shooters. Because when it comes down to these beta males do not know how to deal with this thing we call life. When it comes down to this beta male, they often suppress themselves, and they often suppress their feelings about things. And because they suppress their feelings about things, they hold things within inside themselves, and it packs down like TNT powder. And eventually the container gets so packed with emotional feelings that it eventually reaches a point where you get a spark, and then that spark eventually explodes. And that's what leads to these guys going out here and making these plans to participate in these mass shootings, and why we've seen an uptick in these mass shootings. And these beta males not only come from what I've talked about regarding the feminist movement, which led to a whole generation of socially engineered beta males, but there were beta males before them. And when it comes down to the beta males in the past, before the feminist movement, those beta males, they were few and far between because men had to learn survival skills from other men. But once the feminist movement came along, a lot of men learned how to be beta males through their survival skills or their home environments, because they thought that they wouldn't be able to get sex from women, so they thought that if they gave women what they wanted, they would be able to get the sex that they wanted. That's what led to a lot of these guys submitting to a lot of these feminist women, and what also led to a lot of these boys being raised in these households where they were raised in this feminist culture. And that's what led to the social engineering of an entire generation of these beta males. And the whole thing with these beta males is that they have never learned manhood and masculinity from men, and they've learned most of their social interaction and behaviors from women, and they've learned how to do things by dealing with women. And this is why they have a hard time coping in life and dealing with life, and why any little thing can set them off, and they'll go out here and participate in something like a mass shooting because one little thing out of their smooth world has gone out of place, and it's that one little thing that out of their smooth world that leads to them going off. Because one of the things with your beta male nice guy is this: he has to have a smooth world, and that means a world with no problems, no conflicts, and no issues for themselves. But if one thing goes out of place, that's what leads to them, in some cases, snapping and going berserk. Now, when it comes down to this beta male, they are a ticking time bomb. And what's really scary, as I've said in previous videos, is that we have 2 or 3 generations of these ticking time bombs. And the reason why we're seeing an increase and an uptick in violence with these ticking time bombs is because we've got so many of these guys out here in large numbers, and that's why we're seeing them go off one after the other, because it just takes one thing to go out of place in their smooth world, and these guys go off. And this is something that is really scary about American society, is that thanks to the feminist movement, we now have an entire 2 or 3 generations of these socially engineered beta males out here. And these socially engineered beta males are a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. And it's like walking through a landmine just being out here in the world these days, because you never know when you'll step in front of the wrong guy and the wrong guy will explode. Most people are looking at this recent incident with Stephen Paddock in Las Vegas, and they're talking about guns, they're talking about the violence, but we really need to deal with the mental health component of this issue as related to these beta males and the issues related to this man crisis related to the dysfunctional way we are raising boys in American society. Because the way we have raised boys in American society for the last 60 years has created a generation, 3 generations really, of dysfunctional males who do not know how to function in society, who do not know how to navigate life, and do not know how to deal with the struggles of life or the things that are a part of life, such as failure, loss, or things just not going their way. When it comes down to this beta male is a person who is extremely dangerous, and what's really dangerous about them is this guy may have a smile on his face, but he's so simmering and boiling with rage, and you just don't know it. Something simple as just you walking by this guy could be making this guy upset, or you just being in their presence could make them upset, and they'd never say a thing about it, and they'd hold it in for years and years and years. And the only way we would know that this guy has any sort of anger issue, again, is when it erupts into this horrific violence that these guys participate in. Because when I look at your Stephen Paddock, he fits the same pattern and profile of guys like your James Holmes, your Elliot Rodger, your Steven Stevens, your James Harris Jackson, your Dylan Roof. They all fit the same pattern and the profile. And most people aren't connecting the dots regarding these mass shootings. But when you really connect the dots regarding these mass shootings and these mass shooters, you clearly see a pattern and a profile emerging regarding these beta males. And when you look at that pattern and profile, it takes us straight to the way women have been raising men in this gynocentric and feminist society. And the sad part is, the situation won't get any better, because when it comes down to many males, they don't want to confront this female about the way boys are raised, nor do they want to change society in a way that helps us raise healthier males. We've got the gynocentric society that revolves around the female, and because everything revolves around the female, we're not thinking about the way we're raising boys, and they're growing up to become extremely dysfunctional men, and these dysfunctional men are malfunctioning and self-destructing all over this country. And we really need to focus on this man crisis, because, as I've stated before, it's going to get worse instead of better. And the reason why it's going to get worse is because no one wants to acknowledge the problem as related to the man crisis here in America. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.